Hello, my name is Rabbi Barbara Aiello, and I welcome you to Synagogue Ner Tamid del Sud, which means in Hebrew and Italian, the eternal light of the south of Italy. This is the first active synagogue in 500 years since Inquisition times, and it is a pluralistic synagogue, meaning that we are open and welcoming to Jews of all backgrounds. I want to give you an opportunity to see some of the things that you'll find here in our synagogue, and also invite you to come visit us one day if you would like to do that as well. I am the first and only woman rabbi in all of Italy, and maybe what's even more important is I'm the first and only non-Orthodox rabbi in all of Italy as well, who lives and works here. And that means that our synagogue is open and welcoming to Jews of all backgrounds, to interfaith families, to gay and lesbian couples and their children, and to anyone who is Jewish, was Jewish, has Jewish roots, or just wants to come and be part. We're happy to have you. Coming up soon will be the holiday, the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah, and that is the Jewish New Year. Rosh is the Hebrew word for head, and Shana is year, so it is the head of the year. And the Rosh Hashanah falls normally in September. The dates change every year for the Jewish holidays, which is similar to the Christian holiday of Easter, where it changes each year, but other Christian holidays do not. But with the Jewish holidays, every one of them changes. Sometimes we call that the rabbi's nightmare, because the calendar is different every single year. So what we have right here in front of us are called shofarot. Shofarot is a Hebrew word. It means shofar, plural, shofarot, many. Shofar is one, and it is the Hebrew word for trumpet or temple trumpet. This is not a manufactured instrument. In fact, it is the oldest musical instrument in continuous use in the world. And these are from animals. Well, this one is from an antelope from Morocco, from the northern part of Africa. In the Mediterranean, which is called the Jewish culture in the Mediterranean is called Sephardic culture. This is a shofar as well, and this is a little bit different type from a stambeco or from an ibex, that are found in Portugal and Spain and sometimes southern Italy as well. These shofarot are maybe shofarot that you might have seen before, and these are from a bushbuck or a ram, and we find these in Eastern Europe, in Poland and Austria, Germany and Russia. And if you'll notice here, the mouthpieces, the aperture is not manufactured. So each one, you have to learn how to play each one differently. Each one is different, I should say, in terms of knowing how to play it. For Rosh Hashanah, we listen, we hear 4 different sounds to remind us of the looking back on the year past, and things we've done wrong that we need to make right, and also a feeling for being fresh and clean and brand new for a brand new year, starting all over with hope and with hope in our hearts. The first sound in Hebrew is called a tekiah. That means attention. So I'm going to get your attention now with tekiah. The second sound is called shevarim, and shevarim is the sighing sound. You think back on the year and you think to yourself, you know, I didn't answer all of my emails. I was supposed to meet a friend and I never called her back. Some of the things we neglected to do, and we sigh, this is shevarim. As we look back, we may realize that we've done some things that we are not proud of and not happy about, and it brings tears to our eyes, and that is the Teruah sound. The Teruah is the sound of sobbing or crying, and I'll use this one for you. Teruah. It's the crying crying sound. And then at the end of Rosh Hashanah, actually the end of the High Holy Day cycle, is Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And we hear one long blast of the shofar, which inaugurates, which begins the brand new year. And the task of a rabbi is to sound it as long as you can. So let's see how long I can do this. And we say Shana Tova, Happy New Year. Here in our synagogue we have several collections that are very important, and they're fun to look at too, and they bring us together as Jewish people, because sometimes I think that when we learn about Judaism, we learn about the Holocaust, which is very important. We learn about the Shoah, but sometimes we forget, or we are not introduced to the fact that Judaism is a joyful religion and a very, very upbeat and very happy religion. And this represents the holiday of Hanukkah, which comes in December, which comes near the end of the year. Sometimes people say that it is Jewish Christmas, but it comes near Christmas time, but we don't have the same theology, of course. And so we do not celebrate Christmas, but we do celebrate Hanukkah. Hanukkah is very interesting because Pope John Paul II, the Polish Pope, opened the doors of dialogue between Christians and Jews when he said that the Jews are the older brothers and sisters of the Christians. And then he went on to say that we have more things that unite us than divide us. And one of them is Hanukkah, because in the Catholic Bible, in the Christian Bible, we find the two books of the Maccabees. And in those books is the story of Hanukkah. For Jews, we don't have the book of Maccabees in our Jewish Bible called Tanakh, but we do have the story of Hanukkah in the Talmud, which is in one of our holy books. These are called Hanukkiot, that's plural, and one is Hanukkiah. And they're all different, except for the fact that they have eight candles for lighting for each day of the miracle of lights, and another one here, which is called the helping candle or the shamus. And I've collected these over the years. I am a big fan of cats, and my husband gave me this as a Hanukkah gift one year. When I was a rabbi in the United States, my students said, Rabbi, I was a rabbi in Milan. I left the United States and went to Milan first before I came to Calabria. And my students said, are you going to ride a Vespa all over Milan? I said, not at all. So they said, maybe we'll give you a Harley Davidson. So they gave me this to bring to Italy. This belonged to my daughter. This is a Hanukkah. She's 39 years old now. So this is 39 years old. This is one of my older ones. And this is very interesting because I do a lot of work with elderly people. And elderly people are often using oxygen, and so candles go in all of these, and candle flames, of course, is not appropriate in their rooms or even when they are in a group. So a friend of mine made me this, and these are candle flames, but they're glass, so that an elderly person who's using oxygen is able to celebrate Hanukkah. And behind it is, we say Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of gold, and that is a Hanukkah with reminiscent of the light, the beautiful light shining on Jerusalem as the sun sets. If you've ever been there, it's really beautiful. On the middle shelf here, we have what is called Mezuzah. Mezuzah is a little case that we find on the doors of our Jewish homes, offices, schools, and generally speaking, the Mezuzah is pointing inward. This one is from Russia. This is one of the oldest ones that I have. It's about over 100 years old, and there's a little prayer inside. It's a little prayer, a little tube with a prayer inside, and that's what characterizes a mezuzah. There is, and when we put it on the door, we point it inward. And that means that when we come home from work or school, we touch the mezuzah, we kiss our fingers, and we touch the mezuzah to remind us that we leave all our troubles outside the door, and we come into our homes with peace and love. And when we leave in the morning, if we take the love we have in our family and the peace that we have in our family, and we do the same thing, reminding ourselves that we share that peace and love with the world. This one is from Rome, and this is unusual because in addition to the prayer inside, we find the Hebrew letter Shin, and it stands for one of the names of God, which is Shaddai. And here we see the word Shaddai right here, which means God is protector. And this one's a very pretty one because this is a wedding. This is a Jewish wedding. And this is the baldacchino, the chuppah, or the wedding canopy, and the bride and groom standing underneath. And of course, the prayer is in the back. And this one is for children. And many times we find a mezuzah down low so that children can touch it when they come in and out of the synagogue. And this is Noah's Ark. And the one I like best was brought to me by a family from Japan. Sushi. With the prayer behind as well. This is the Sanctuary of Synagogue near Tamid del Sud, and this is where we sing, pray, make the blessings, and read the Torah scroll. The Torah is kept in a cabinet called Aron Kodesh, which is the Holy Ark, and the Torah is taken out every Saturday and during the week, and we read a portion of the Torah. We talk about it and study it as well. These are 3 Torah scrolls that belong to the synagogue. This one was our very first one, and it was hand inscribed and hand calligraphy in Hebrew, the original language of the Bible, in 1783. And this is parchment here. And as you can see, the Torah is rolled. We're coming to the end of the year. So the Torah is rolled. Since we read Hebrew from right to left, we roll the Torah scroll also from right to left. And we're coming to the very end of the Torah. This Torah was inscribed in Turin in 1783. It went to Jerusalem. Then it went to New York, upstate New York, in the Buffalo and Rochester area. Then it went to Manhattan. Then it went to Miami Beach. And then it went to a Torah museum. And I had the opportunity of officiating at the wedding of the curator of the museum, and we became friendly. And when he was given this Torah scroll, he thought it should come home to Italy. And so we are so grateful to have it. This is also a kosher Torah scroll, means that every page can be read, every panel can be read. This is also, as you can see, rolled so that we're getting to the end of the year. And this was handwritten in Nice in the south of France. And it was done because it was a time of a persecution in 1880. And the rabbi of the synagogue decided to close the synagogue. But he wanted to still be able to bring services and Torah to his members, so he went individually to the individual homes of his congregants. And he had this particular scroll made for a very important reason. He would bring it into the house and he would tell the lady of the house, the woman of the house, he would say, if trouble comes knocking at the door, you take this Torah scroll and you hold it like this, and then have someone put your cloak or your cape over you. And if anyone comes bursting in, it will look like you're carrying a baby. And so this Torah scroll survived a very difficult time. It's covered with ginestra, with a piece of cloth that is woven from ginestra. The Jews of Spain brought the weaving of Ginestra from Spain to Sicily, from Sicily to here, to southern Italy, to the toe of the Italian boot. And it is a very, very hard fiber. And so the Jewish women taught all of the other women in the area to cut the fibers, tie them together, and put them in the mountain stream cold, cold water, which are running down the mountains here all over. Cover it with a rock and leave it there for 2 months, and it softens the fibers. And this piece is about 100 years old, and these is another piece of Ginestra that we made the curtains of the Aron Kodesh out of. It's a little more durable because it's not quite as old. But the interesting thing is that the women, as they taught the weaving of Ginestra, they also taught from the Torah, which says that on everything you weave, you must put a stripe of blue. And so even though this was probably a hand towel originally, this was probably a bed sheet originally, the stripe of blue, it comes from how we are directed to weave in the Torah. And also the fibers are not mixed. And this is another weaving from a local person here in Calabria. And she made me this talit. Talit is the Hebrew word for the prayer shawl. And notice what she did? She made a stripe of blue. To tell you a little bit about how I arrived here, and it is for me it is a fascinating story, and there's a word in Hebrew that describes it. It is beshert. Beshert means meant to be, or il destino. And the very first time I brought my father here in the late 1960s, and when the airplane touched down in the airport, and we rented a car and we drove up here. My father was so excited to see his birthplace. I felt completely at home. And I knew that there would come a time when I would come back here to live. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I felt it in my soul. I felt it in my heart that I would be back. I am so pleased to be a part of 2 diaspora. The Jewish diaspora, which means that we Jews are in all 4 corners of the world. That's why we have the fringes on our talit, on our prayer shawl, to remind us that Jewish people belong in all 4 corners of the world. One of the things that strikes me about living here and working here, and I have been living full-time in Calabria since, full-time in Italy since 2004, and here in Calabria since 2006. And the synagogue has been open now for 11 years. And each year I learned a little more about the culture, and I learned a little more about why I need to be here. And it has to do with the talit. This is the prayer shawl that what we looked at a little bit earlier. But right on the corners, we see the fringes. And the fringes remind us, in the 4 corners of the talit, and I'll show you the other ones too, are symbolic of the fact that Jewish people belong in all 4 corners of the world. That means that a Jewish presence here is really important. And also, there is the Italian diaspora as well. And the Italian diaspora has to do with maintaining, or maybe finding first, and then maintaining cultural traditions so that they're not lost to the next generation. And I'll give you an example. Here in Calabria, there are families that on Friday night put a white tablecloth on the family table and light a candle. And it's so interesting when I say to them, do you know why you do this? They say, it's our family tradition. But of course it comes from the Jewish tradition of celebrating the Shabbat, the Sabbath, on Friday night. And so my job here is to bring these 2 diaspora together, the Jewish diaspora and the Italian diaspora. and how important it is for me to be here and for me to be respectful of the culture and to be respectful also of how sensitive people are to understanding their Jewish roots. One thing that happened 2 years ago was so striking. A young man of 19 years old knocked on my door, and he said, "I'm looking for the rabbi." And I said, "Here she is." He said, "Well, my grandfather passed away several months ago, and before he died, he asked me to go into his desk drawer way in the back and to find a piece of wood," which the young man said he did. And he said when he took the piece of wood out of the desk, the grandfather, who was about to pass away, said, "Whenever you meet a rabbi, you take this to the rabbi." So he did. He brought it to me, and it was a long piece of wood with a hand carved, the shape of a hand. And he said, "What is this?" And I brought him right here into the synagogue, and I took out the Torah scroll, and I showed him that it is a pointer. It was a pointer for touching each word in Hebrew as you read the Torah. I said, "Your grandfather wanted you to know that you have Jewish roots and you have a Jewish ancestry." And for me, it is, I'm humbled and honored to be able to bring the Italian tradition and the Jewish tradition together in this little corner of the diaspora. I'm the first person in my family to be born in the United States, and for that I'm truly grateful. My father was born right here. As a matter of fact, an extension of this palazzo is our family home, and it has been been a part of our family for 440 years. My great-grandfather, Saverio Scalise, was supposed to have led Hebrew prayers in the cantina room just a few meters away from where I'm speaking to you now. I often wondered, how did he do this, especially since established Judaism was wiped out at the time of the Inquisition. And so for hundreds of years, anyone who wanted to observe Jewish ritual or engage in Jewish prayer would have a very hard time knowing what to do, because as these traditions were passed along over the years, they became less and less formal, they became less and less accurate as time went on. But then I found out that my great-grandfather, Saverio, from 1880 to 1891, left Calabria here and went to Montreal in Canada to a little Hasidic settlement of Hasidic Jews, and he must have studied there, and he brought back the traditions and was able to keep those traditions alive. As I said, my father was born right here and grew up here. He was also a partisan during World War II, fighting with the Jewish underground, and because he spoke fluent German and French, he also coordinated with radio transmission between the other resistance groups in Europe. He was behind enemy lines on D-Day, on the invasion of Normandy, and he was then later a part of the American Army for the liberation of the Buchenwald concentration camp, which is really what changed his life. He was a secular Jew before that, very much interested in the culture but not in the religion. But his experience with the liberation of Buchenwald brought a spiritual life back to him, which was I'm grateful for, because he was able to pass it on to me as well. And my mother and father met each other in the displaced persons camp in Rome, and they got a visa for the United States in 1947. My mother traveled on 17 days on a boat, pregnant with me. She delivered me 6 weeks after she got off the boat, and so that's how I happened to be born in the United States. And all of my ancestors are from this area. I am a Calabrese, testa dura, and because my mother is part Sicilian, also capatosta. That helps a lot living here because I fit right in.